Welcome back, everyone, to the second episode of the Gutter Run podcast. We want to thank you
Sup?
so much for being here. I am once again joined by my good friend Daniel Abramovitz, and
Howdy.
today we are going to be talking about Alien Romulus. Yes, this is a follow-up Alien week for you, so I hope
Right.
that you're really into creepy,
This
crawling, grotesque creatures.
this isn't gonna be like an alien podcast like forever, I promise.
No,
It just kinda happened
it
that
worked out that way,
yeah.
and Daniel and
Yeah.
I are both strangely interested in the Alien
Right.
franchise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to give everybody listening kind of a rundown of what we're going to look at, we've got news roundup today with a few points of discussion, including Oasis getting back together, because I guess as young people, that's important to us.
Maybe.
Our main topic is, of course, going to be Alien Romulus. And then for what's on our nightstand, we have a few things to talk about. Well, we did
Yeah.
recently read a Predator versus Wolverine crossover comic. So if we have an
Hmm.
opportunity, we'll go ahead and talk about that there as well.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this up front. We do now have a Gmail account that you can reach out to. So that is gutterrunpodcasting@gmail.com. So in the
Hmm.
future, if you want to, send messages or ask questions, we will add that as a segment at the end there, and we will take your
Absolutely.
fan mail.
Send us
Um,
stuff,
yeah,
please.
absolutely. Send us stuff. It makes me feel
It'd be
important,
awesome.
and
Yeah.
ultimately, this is just for me to stroke my own ego. That's really all that I'm doing here, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Daniel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Doing okay.
Are
How
you, without giving anything away, did you enjoy your viewing of Alien Romulus?
I did. I did
Excellent.
enjoy it. I feel like what I texted you might have came across the wrong way, but I did enjoy it. Yes.
And I did worry that I had, because my expectations were quite low, I think, coming into it.
You
So
hyped it up.
I hyped
You
it
you
up
hyped it up for
considerably.
me.
Like I,
Yeah.
w- I was very, very happy with that movie, which of course we will get to later in the episode.
Yes.
But yeah, in terms of our news roundup for the week, I've only got two things right here. I had a third, but I ended up having to delete it because it turned out to be fake. So that was very cool.
Oh. Oh,
Um,
we're not a fake news
we are
podcast.
not a
Okay.
fake news,
All
ladies and
right.
gentlemen at home. We are not a fake news podcast. Yeah, so Oasis is back together, and they
That's
will be
crazy.
doing a series of stadium tours in the UK and Ireland. And
Yeah.
this comes, I think the announcement was like 15 years to the day, either after their an album release or maybe after they had broken up. I can't remember exactly.
Really.
Yeah, so
That
it
that
seems
feeds into my
strangely.
theory.
What's your theory?
My theory is this was all planned because
For
they knew their popularity was going to wane because they were a 90s band and it was becoming the 2000s and their music wasn't as good. So like, hey, let's go dormant for 15 years, get back together. Boom. Now there's all this popularity again surrounding them, you know?
Interesting.
That's my theory.
My only, I guess,
My
retort to
conspiracy.
that is that having watched that like Oasis Supersonic documentary
Oh,
and
you
seeing
watched
just
that.
how god
The hate
awful both of the
the
Gallagher
hate was
brothers
real.
are. Yeah, I mean
The
they
hate was
seem,
okay. Okay.
because when I was young, and I mean I've always enjoyed Oasis in terms of like the battle, the Brit pop bands. I prefer Oasis. I think in the Americas we kind of took them in more so than we did something like Blur. But I I always assumed that one of the brothers was the aggressor and that the other was actually just a cool guy, you know? Absolutely
No,
not the case.
they're both.
They're both, it's like two of the
Ugh.
worst people you've ever met that happen to be in like the right place at the right time and
Yeah,
create a sound that people wanted to hear.
right.
And they shot into stardom. It's interesting, and I shouldn't make this comparison because I feel like somebody's going to get on to me. But the like overnight extreme success and kind of like surge in popularity that somebody like Chaperone is
Mm,
seeing,
mm,
and how negatively that is now affecting her, I think is very comparable to what happened with the Gallagher brothers and
mm,
Oasis, and that
mm.
they shot to this level of superstardom so fast, supersonic, like so quickly that I don't think that any of them were properly prepared to deal with that. And
Yeah.
rather than it like eating them alive, they kind of just were already, pricks to begin with. So it's like it didn't
Yeah.
matter to them.
This is what they were destined to be. Yeah.
Exactly. If
Yeah.
the Gallagher brothers might be proof that we do live in a simulation because they saw that level of popularity, but they were just like built for it.
Right. Right, yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I
Uh,
like, is this exciting at all to you?
I mean, I'm not the biggest Oasis fan. I mean, I think their first two albums are pretty good, but
Yeah,
I it just kind of sounds it just sounds well, I mean it's Britpop, it just kind of sounds like that 90s rock kind of stuff. So, I mean, not that
definitely.
it's a bad thing or anything, but I was reading their Wikipedia about like how like they formed and all that stuff and how Noel was like we're gonna go commercial with this because I think before they were less I think they were more experimental as far as experimental goes. I don't know. I
Yeah,
haven't listened
yeah.
to any of it, but it seems like that they wanted to reach as many people as possible and kind of made their sound more palatable, I guess. Not that it's
Yeah.
bad or anything, but yeah, I mean it's cool, I guess. I mean I'm happy for you, I guess, because
Are
you're
you
such
happy
a
for
big
Kendrick Lamar, world's biggest Oasis fan?
what?
So I don't know
What?
I don't know if you've seen this, but there
I
was
haven't.
so back when that whole Drake beef was going on, I think there was like Kendrick Lamar did an Instagram live or something where he was just like doing burpees in a park somewhere in Compton, and the dude looked like he was like prison strong. I was like, holy shit, like what's going on here? Or holy cow, sorry, I got to make sure no explicit stuff in this because Spotify gets on to me.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
but I feel like
Bad
he was
boy.
wearing an Oasis shirt at that point
He
in time.
was?
Yeah.
That
So
goes hard,
and
okay?
if you look
Yeah.
up Kendrick Lamar Oasis, there's tons and tons of like fan photos and stuff of him just wearing Oasis merch.
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, I guess he's a really big fan, and I think that that's super cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, I get.
Very interesting.
I already mentioned this, and you kind of brought it up as well. But I'm a very big Oasis fan. I don't dislike Blur or some of the other Britpop projects of the time.
I thought you liked Blur. I thought you were a
I
big Blur
like Blur
guy.
a fair amount, but I think that I prefer the stuff that Damon Albarn would have, went on to do with the Gorillas. I really
Okay,
enjoyed
yeah,
the
yeah.
Gorillas.
Okay.
So I don't know. I guess in my head, like I compartmentalize musical projects. So if I'm looking at like Oasis versus Blur, I don't really care for like Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds or like other things that the
Yeah.
Gallagher brothers have gone on to do, but I do love
Hmm.
Oasis. Whereas I like Blur quite a bit, but I prefer gorillas, I guess. So in
Yeah.
my head, I'm like, okay, well then the logic somehow makes me prefer Oasis to Blur is how that
Okay.
works out. But
Some strange machination in
so some
your
strange
mind.
calculus that I'm doing in my
Yeah.
head, yeah.
It
It's the mental illness is what it is.
always is. It always
um
is.
okay, well, I guess number two, and
Um,
I oh
yeah.
sorry, go on.
Oh no. Well, I just where exactly are they touring? Have they like released locations yet, or is
Yeah,
it
so it looked like major cities within, the United Kingdom and then parts of
okay?
Ireland, and then really
Okay.
nothing outside of that. There's no other kind of like
That's what I
international
thought.
dates at this point.
Okay.
I
Okay.
will say people were in queues to buy tickets that were like, 17 hours long.
Oh my
So
gosh.
people want to see them, which is crazy,
Yeah.
but it does
Yeah.
seem almost like perfect like marketing on their
Yeah.
behalf.
It is. It really is.
The second thing that I wanted to discuss, I actually sent this to you earlier in the week, but there have been some set photos that have leaked for Fantastic Four First Steps, directed by Matt
Right.
Shackman, which
Hmm.
should be coming out next year. And in particular, we saw a photo of the Thing,
Yeah.
and I thought that was pretty
I
exciting. So
liked it.
yeah,
Yeah. It had that Jack Kirby looking face to it with the big
it
eyebrows, the
had the
big
giant brow
yeah.
and it had the
Yeah.
short nose, which is like
Hmm.
those are kind of I think quintessential elements to like a Kirby style monster
Yes.
character. You
Yeah.
see it in his renditions of the Hulk
I
as
love Jack
well.
Kirby.
Love
Yes.
Jack Kirby. Yeah, one of these
Amazing.
days we will do a full podcast that is just on the life of Kirby,
Yeah, he's amazing.
because he's incredible. He's maybe one of the
Hmm.
best to ever do it,
Yeah.
and like so many of my artists' favorite artists, it just all goes back to Jack Kirby,
Yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, so there's been set photos of I wish I could think of the guy's name. He was in Stranger Things, but he's the Human Torch.
The guy.
Joseph Quinn. Joseph Quinn
Okay.
is the Human Torch. Pedro Pascal is Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, Vanessa Kirby is Susan Storm,
Hmm.
and then we have Evan Moss Backrack, one of those. Either way, he was he's cousin on the Bear currently, but
Hmm.
he is playing
The thing.
lovable Yancey Street orphan Ben Grimm. one of the best to ever do it. And we now have kind of a pseudo look at his design. So yeah, you would say
Yes.
that you're pretty happy with it, right?
I'm happy with it, except he's got a shirt on. I really wanted him to have his shirt off and see his rocky abs and his chest and stuff like that. I think it makes it easier probably on the visual effects department if he is wearing a shirt, probably. But
Yes.
at some point, he's taking that thing off. I don't care what
My
people say.
my expectation is that once they actually go into any sort of like, I imagine that the the Fantastic Four in this will be like the Beatles. Like it'll be like a Hard Day's Night, right? Where it's like they're like local celebrities, everybody loves them, they're exciting.
Yeah.
So they wear the uniform almost more as like when the Beatles all wore suits back in the day and they have like a
Okay, yeah,
matching
yeah.
outfit. And I
Right.
bet that anytime they actually get into it with somebody or they have an action sequence or whatnot, he's like, all right, dude, shirt off, just the trunks. I'm just a
He
giant
just the
rock man.
trunks.
I'm just a giant rock man, you know?
Yeah, I
Um,
hope
I
you're right.
I will say some people online were like, "Oh my gosh, are they doing a physical rendition? Like, is Eben Moss Backrack in the? I'm gonna say Backrack. Is Evan Moss Backrack in the in the suit? No, I'm fairly certain that what's going on there is that oftentimes when you have a large visual effects character, they will build like a maquette kind of to scale to
Yeah,
put in scenes with people so that the
yeah,
the visual effects artists can kind of know in post production where they need to be
right.
animating this character at, and then
Yeah,
they also have reference for their height versus the height of the other people in the
yeah.
scene.
Hmm.
Um,
That makes sense to me.
but no, dude, like it looks really solid. I'm still
Hmm.
very excited for this
Solid as a
movie.
rock.
Solid as a rock. Good stuff. I wish I had a bell that I could ding when you do stuff like
Yeah,
that.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. I did find it, or I guess it's something that is it'll forever be an unknown to me. So the director of this is Matt Shackman. Matt Shackman did WandaVision for Marvel, and he seems to be a really kind of like trusted directorial, I guess visionary for them. They like the stuff that he does. They feel like he plays well kind of in their playground. But Matt Shackman, you may or may not know, directed tens of episodes. I don't want to say hundreds because I'm not
Tens.
entirely sure how many that they had
Tens.
of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like I
Wait,
feel
are
like he
you
directed
kidding?
full seasons.
Are you for real right now?
I'm absolutely for real.
That's kind
And,
of
and
awesome.
and the thing that I say, so one, that means that he has the ability to shoot humor, and like
Yeah,
make it work,
right.
and that's kind of exciting for me.
Yeah.
But that unknown that I was talking about, the thing that we'll never find out, I thought that the shoe-in perfect casting for Mr. Fantastic would have been Glenn Howerton, aka Dennis
That
Reynolds of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I thought
would
that
have
he
been
would have
interesting to see.
killed that. So it's strange to me that Matt Shackman, who has a pre-existing relationship with this guy, didn't,
Yeah.
talk to the Marvel execs and be like, "Hey guys, I know who's going to do this." They presumably went with Pedro Pascal because he's one of the biggest actors in the world right now.
Yeah.
But of that cast, he is the one that seems the most out of place to me.
Mm.
But I guess
I
he's the
think
age for it, and he's
he is the
he's
age.
good,
I think yeah, he'll do okay. I feel like he might have brought up Glenn Howerton, and then like the execs like brought up all the clips of It's Always Sunny, and they're like, we can't have this man anywhere near
Well,
this much.
and if I recall correctly, I think that Glenn Howerton had auditioned for the role of Star-Lord back when Guardians of the
Really
Galaxy was shooting. And like
interesting.
that's one of those that I'm almost happy he didn't get that. Because even though I mean, Chris Pratt's fine in that role. I wouldn't say
Mhm.
that he's, like the most exciting part of those movies for me. But I can't see Glenn Howerton playing Star-Lord the way Chris Pratt played
No,
Star-Lord.
it
Like
wouldn't have
definitely
worked.
not. Yeah.
No.
So I don't know. I love the Fantastic Four. We talked about Doctor Doom last week. We talked about
Mhm.
Fantastic Four this week. It could be a ongoing thing with us where we're always kind of working in some element of this movie to the news. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what's going on, and that's kind of what I've got for news roundup. Did you have
Mhm.
anything that was happening that you wanted to bring up, or just
No, I
no?
don't think
Awesome.
so. Nothing movie or show or video game or comic related
Book
to me.
related. Okay, got it,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Nothing in the realm of entertainment media.
No.
Okay, well, sweet. If that's the case, then we can go ahead and move on to our main topic, which of course is going to be Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Daniel, you just saw Alien Romulus
Yeah,
last night.
I went by
So
myself.
Did you
It's
really?
terrible. Yeah, I texted our friend Drew, or I called him actually. I had mentioned to him like a few days prior, and he's like, I don't know, maybe. And I called him, and he's like, it's not happening. And I was like, okay. So I
That
went and saw it by myself.
to our listeners who have no idea who this individual is, that is a very, very stereotypical Drew response. Like that's really funny actually. Well, I mean, so okay, here's a question that I do have for you before we kind of get into the meat of this. Was your showing pretty full?
It was about half full, I think.
Okay.
I mean, there was a decent amount of people but there were plenty of empty seats.
Okay.
It wasn't like blockbuster type crowd or anything.
Gotcha. And I don't think that that's bad. The movie has been out for 3 weeks now. I
I
want to
think
say.
something like
Um,
that.
so I would say that's still a pretty strong showing for an R-rated horror feature.
Mhm.
Um, but like when I saw it opening night, um, here in Arkansas, it was like packed to the gills with all sorts of people and
Oh,
like various different like demographics of ages as well. And I thought that
hmm
that was quite exciting. So.
nice.
No, I'm okay. Well, I'm gonna pull up the box office earnings because I'm just interested to throw that out there and kind of see what it's doing currently. But while I'm getting that pulled up, let's kind of get your initial thoughts on Alien Romulus.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good alien movie, you know. It kind of returned back to the classic alien formula that we went to Prometheus and Alien Covenant and we were looking at prequel stuff and more of like the history of the aliens, more of stuff and all that, you know. So this one kind of went back to the usual and had these unwitting characters come into contact with a horrible monster and it was eating them and all that stuff. So I mean it was an enjoyable watch and I mean I don't think it was a perfect movie by any means and I think you had hyped it up pretty good.
Yeah,
So
that's my bad. That's my bad, y'all.
I think you overhyped it maybe a little bit. I don't know, maybe not. But I mean, it's not like I was disappointed or anything by it. I think my disappointments with the film are not like story related
Okay,
necessarily. I
yeah,
guess it's more just like how the film was made, maybe. I don't
gotcha.
know, but yeah.
Okay, so. Given all of that, and I guess we'll try and do spoiler free for a fair amount because I
Yeah.
realized listening back to last week's episode that I spoiled that Newton Hicks died in Alien 3 like immediately. And then midway through
It's
our
been out for a
discussion,
while.
it has, but then like midway through the discussion, I was like, all right, guys, we're doing spoilers now. But yeah, to keep it spoiler free, I guess as a point of difference, I had gone into Alien Romulus liking Fede Alvarez as a director. I've enjoyed both of his Don't Breathe films, and I really liked the Evil Dead remake from 2013. So I was excited to see his vision for this movie and this universe, but I would say overall my expectations were quite low because I didn't. My worry was that even with my gripes for Alien Covenant, I feel that Prometheus and Covenant were interesting, kind of nuanced films in this very storied franchise that were
Right.
doing things differently.
hmm
And my worry is that after those movies kind of underperformed and it kind of didn't find their place within the canon, that Disney, who now owns the Alien license, would have been like, all right, just hire the dude that did the Evil Dead remake and just, back to basics as simple as you
Right.
get it. Which that's not to say that this movie doesn't, I think, do that. Like does it,
Yeah.
bring
It
things back to like an easy in for people? Definitely,
right.
yes.
It accomplished it's like you said last week, I think it's like it pays homage to everything that came before it and it does it so well and so succinctly. I'm really impressed by what they were able to do in this movie.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up being kind of blown away by this. I deeply enjoyed Alien Romulus, and all of my very minor issues with it are nitpicks, and they're not really even about the
Same,
content of the film. They're
same.
about how this changes my opinion of other movies in the same
Oh,
franchise,
okay.
which I guess without giving away spoilers again, the events that occur in this, because they do pull so much from the other entries in the series, put these core characters through more in this single film than like Ellen Ripley went through
I
in
know.
4 movies.
That's what I was
And
thinking
and
about.
that's a really weird place to be in because it almost like delegitimizes the threat of the other alien features in some capacity. Which I know that that's silly, but that's like that was a thought that I had walking out of it, where I was like,
I
huh,
think,
I've never had to really consider that.
I thought about that too. I just it wasn't such an eloquent way of words as you. So
Well, I do appreciate that. So yeah, talking budgets, Alien Romulus came out, recently. It was shot reportedly for about $80 million. That would be production budget.
that's pretty
The
cool.
the the kind of accepted standard for determining marketing and distribution cost is to double that. So 80 million to put the movie together, to pay the cast, to shoot it,
Hmm.
to, package it, and then another 80 million on top of that traditionally to, get it to get the advertisements out there to make sure that people are going to go see the movie. So that would put
Hmm.
us at about 160 million for break even, and up to this point worldwide total gross is 234 million.
Hmm.
So it's made its money back and a fair
Yeah,
amount. Like
yeah.
it's doing quite well. Something that I found interesting, though, is that Prometheus, even though it was seemingly not received nearly as well and people really didn't care for it at the time,
Hmm.
made like $430 million,
Oh,
I think,
dang.
worldwide.
I was
Now,
did not realize that. Yeah.
Prometheus was also shot for a fair amount more, though. I think that it was like 100
Right.
plus million for
Yeah.
production budgets. Um, Something that we can talk about without spoiling any story stuff, the performances in this, and in particular that of David Johnson as the Andy character,
Oh my goodness.
incredible.
He was I at first I was unsure if I would like him, but as it kept going, I was like, oh my gosh, he's like this guy's got this android stuff down pat. Like it was incredible. His performance. Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
I'll ask you this now because I don't know if this was purposeful on the filmmakers or not, but Andy is introduced without you have it, which this isn't really a spoiler. Andy plays an android character. There's always
Yeah.
going to be an
As I
android
yeah.
or a synthetic in these movies, but
Right.
he's introduced to you without that knowledge. Like that's not the first
Hmm.
thing that you're immediately told about him. Now you
Hmm.
do learn within like 10 minutes or whatever, but when you're introduced to him, they seem to treat his malfunctions almost as if he is like neurodivergent or in
Yeah.
some way, he has difficulties understanding and relating to people.
Hmm.
And when I was watching it, I genuinely, and it's so funny, but I was like, I get it, man, 100%. I was like, what, we can be autism brothers. Um, and I feel like that was almost purposeful because
Yeah,
what
definitely.
better way do you drum up like immediate support and kind of like moral recognition for an individual than by seeing that they may not have the same capacity as yourself. Like
Right.
people want to protect those things that they
Yes.
feel
Their
are in
vulnerable
harm's way. They're vulnerable.
vulnerabilities. Yes.
So I feel like that was definitely purposeful on the part of the filmmaker Fede Alvarez and
Yeah.
crew to kind of use his malfunctioning but presented in such a way as he looks like he may be developmentally
Hmm.
disabled.
Hmm.
I just thought that was really really fun. And then
Yeah.
Kaylee Spaney plays Rain. I
Hmm.
thought that she was also a very very strong force in this.
Hmm.
Definitely solid for the role. I don't know that she really gets an opportunity to. I hate using the like spread her wings, but she is a pretty subdued character in this movie
Yeah.
overall.
It's not until the end where she kind of like starts like taking action and like making like decisions and like instead of reacting to the things that's going on in the story, she's actually like having an impact on the events of the story itself. So yeah.
Definitely, yes. We have a few other characters as well. I would say Bjorn is the young man with the English accent. And
I'll say one thing. The
Okay.
more British people in a movie that I see, the more annoying it is. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. I don't know what it is.
No, I completely agree.
I
I feel bad saying it because it's nothing to do with British people. But
no.
he was also playing a character that I feel like you were fundamentally meant to
Yeah,
dislike.
right.
Like
Yeah, right.
he was very difficult. And honestly, every time he opened his mouth, I was like, God, dude, you gotta stop talking. That's
I can't
crazy.
handle it. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
but Bjorn was Spike Fern. Archie Renault is Tyler. He's kind of like the de facto leader, I think, of this
Right.
crew.
Hmm.
To give everybody a primer on what exactly is happening in the movie, um, in the far future on a mining planet, there are these groups of young, either late teenagers, early 20-year-olds, and because of the very harsh conditions on this planet and constant storms, they never see the sun. Um, they also seem to be kind of under the boot heel of this, greedy capitalist corporate entity that is the Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, most of their parents have died in mine related accidents or in workplace scuffles, things of that nature. And they learn that there is a satellite ship that is floating in orbit of their planet, and it belongs to the company, and they think that they can board it and effectively hijack it and use it to get to this utopic um, I forget what name they actually give the planet, but effectively that there
Yeah,
is a planet that is like paradise,
right.
and it's outside of the jurisdiction of Weyland-Yutani, so they
Oh.
want an opportunity to be able to go there and check this out. And of course, once they get onto the spaceship, things go awry in very exciting and very graphic ways.
And there's aliens.
Yes, and there for a movie called Alien Romulus, there's sure a fair amount of aliens. But yeah, I mean, given that that's how the movie kicks off, is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we got into spoilers? I thought that the cinematography was really impressive for an Alien movie.
I don't know. I think the biggest thing I noticed was like the difference in approach to filmmaking because to me it felt more like a horror movie than previous Alien uh movies. But I think I mean obviously because Fede Alvarez was directing, I think that's probably why the case is. But I don't. I think it's not that it made me dislike it because it was more of a horror movie. It was just something different. And I expect I don't I maybe it's just because I like Ridley Scott, but I like his approach to filmmaking and the way he made the first Alien. And the first Alien is a horror movie, but it's more atmospheric, I think, and it's a slower pace kind of thing. And I feel like this was almost a victim of Disneyification, if I can say that. I don't know. I just made that word, but it feels like the film and other Disney films are afraid of being boring. And so like something always has to be happening. We're on to the next thing or
Yep.
something's
Yep.
funny or something like that. And I think I think you gotta not be afraid for a film to be a little boring or like at least it'll take some time to do something or something like that. Not that that was like a egregious thing in this movie or anything. And in fact, I think Fede Alvarez kind of pushed back against some of the studio comments about what they wanted to do in this movies, and props to him for that. But um, cinematography I thought was pretty decent. It was more fast paced, it seemed like the cuts were quicker and like we were looking at more things quicker. It wasn't like these long like panning shots of like LV-426 and
Yeah.
stuff like that, which obviously the setting is different for all this. We're in this one we're like heavily confined to the space station of this other stuff. But yeah, I thought it was a little bit different of a watch just with those like filmmaking elements than it was for the previous Alien installments.
I
But
think that
yeah.
those are all very good points, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because I hadn't really thought about it that way. But some of my favorite shots in this were actually just like intercut, like it was like they were padding for time almost. Like
Mm,
cut. Here's an awesome, like breathtakingly gorgeous shot of the space station at large for 5 to 6 seconds. But it was really just to make sure that there was no downtime with the characters almost.
mm,
That's kind
mm,
of a good point. I hadn't really considered that.
mm,
Yeah, I think it looks terrific. I think that the sound design was awesome. Really like the
mm,
cast. We talked a fair amount about those. I did want to specifically call out. She plays Navarro. Eileen Wu. I'm pretty sure
Hmm.
this is her first ever feature film.
Oh, really?
So, and she doesn't have a lot to do in the movie, but she does have maybe one of the most integral sequences in it,
Right.
given a certain thing that happens to her. But I thought that she was really strong. I should also
Yeah.
call out Isabella Merced is in this, and Fede Alvarez seems to be a really big video game fan because there are
Yeah.
tons and
Yeah.
tons of Easter eggs in this movie that
Kind of
relate
funny.
to um, the Alien Isolation video game. There are also, including like there's like telephone stations that are like the save boxes. Like that's the interface that you use
Hmm.
to save your game when you're playing Alien Isolation. And it also seems like Fede Alvarez has hinted online that he may have cast Kaylee Spaney and Isabella Merced in the film because he's a big fan of the Last of Us franchise. And when he was playing The Last of Us Part 2, he thought that Kaylee Spaney would be a perfect Ellie from The Last of Us and that Isabella Merced would make a great Dina. Lo and
Interesting.
behold, Kaylee Spaney auditioned for Ellie but did not get that role. But Isabella
Hmm.
Merced, I believe, is now playing Dina in season 2 of The Last of Us on
Ah.
HBO. So
Oh.
I don't know if Fede Alvarez kind of divined that into existence, but yeah, that's
He's a fellow gamer,
he
is what he
definitely
is.
is, and he just seems like a really good and approachable guy. I like him a lot. Like I started following him on Twitter after I saw the movie because I was like, this dude just seems cool, you know. So that's
Yeah.
good.
The stuff I've read about him sounds good. Yeah.
Um, I thought that this week we could expand the rating scale because
Okay.
I don't know. Well, one because one of my favorite podcasts, The Weekly Planet, which if you guys don't listen, you should go ahead and check them out. They do a best movie ever or worst movie ever, and I feel like recommended or not recommended is effectively just ripping off that. So I think that we should expand it out to like worth watching in a theater. So like worth buying a ticket for.
Yes,
Okay,
I understand this now.
and then
Okay.
like worth watching on streaming,
Hmm.
and then maybe like it's okay if you catch it on TV, but you don't have to pay a lot of attention to it. And then
Yeah.
it's like don't watch it. Like those would kind of be like the four tier. And I'll
I
come up
like
with
this.
better names for those in the future. But yeah, so before we get into spoilers, I just want to say this was definitely a worth watching in a theater movie. I thought it was absolutely worth the ticket
The
price.
experience of this movie is best served in a theater. Like you will not get
100%.
the full effect if you choose to stream this at home, I'm sorry to
No.
say.
And I think that part of that is because it's so frightening
Yeah.
that it is more exciting to watch it with other people and
Hmm.
see their reactions to the things that kind of occur in this movie.
Right.
But given that we've now discussed that, we're gonna move into spoilers.
Spoiler
So
territory.
spoiler territory. Daniel, where do you want to start on this? Is there anything that really kind of like tickled you?
Do we want to talk about the last 15 minutes or do we want to put
I
that
think we
off?
should save that because boy, do I like
Okay.
it. So
Okay.
I guess one of the first things that occurs in this movie is that you have your cold open, and there is a science research vessel that is trying to track down the alien that was shot out of the airlock from the Nostromo in the
Mhm.
original Alien movie. And you see like the whole of the Nostromo, and you see that that's written, and they find the alien, and it has like cocooned itself in
Yeah.
almost like an asteroid or
It
something.
looked like a big block of obsidian or something. I didn't know what
Yeah.
they were going for at first, and then I was like, "Oh wait, that's the alien." Like,
Yeah,
oh wow.
and I guess that it was able to, which maybe we've seen that the aliens effectively terraform like the areas in which they inhabit, like in
Mhm.
aliens
Right.
when they create the hive. Like that's like
Hmm.
a biomechanical kind of like production that they presumably
Right.
excrete or whatnot,
It's
you
like a
know.
wasp nest or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. So I guess that means that they can also survive, space just by kind of like
It's
cocooning
they can
themselves.
survive almost. It's a perfect creature.
It's a perfect organism. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I called that. I had
You
told
did?
I
Okay.
had told friends at work that how I thought that this was going to tie into the alien timeline is that the alien in this would be the one that was shot out of the airlock at the end of Alien, and
Mhm.
that ended up being the case. So I was very
Mhm.
excited about that. But also they kill that alien before we ever get to see it.
Yeah. I
Um,
because I kind of wondered about that as things were progressing. It was like, is the main alien creature from the first one going to be the same antagonist in this one? Because that's kind of neat if they did, but they didn't go that route,
No,
did
that they did
they went
not go
differently.
that way. And I don't know that I'm missing a ton for them not having done that.
Right. I don't
But
think
it
so.
is interesting that by the time that our group gets to the Romulus space station and they find it, in the state of disarray where obviously things went very wrong, and you
Mhm.
look up and there's just the alien from the first movie like crucified on wiring and stuff, and
That was
it's like, and
amazing.
like its blood has come out. It's a very there's some it's not as heavy-handed as a Prometheus or an Alien Covenant, but I do think there's some very obvious like religious imagery in this, you
Yeah,
know.
there's some interesting stuff going on with the surface of
So
it.
that was interesting to me,
It's
and I did
cool.
enjoy that as a tie-in. And I guess
Hmm.
ultimately maybe I'm happy that it did end up being, oh wait, it's the exact same alien this time around that is causing
Right.
more strife,
I
because it ends up being that there was a larger kind of production going on here.
yeah.
Um, so it turns out that the scientists employed by Weyland Yutani wanted to observe the alien and extract from it whatever sort of biological mechanisms that allow it to persist, so
Under
indefinitely and
any
with such
circumstance.
ease. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And we get a scene where a digitally resurrected Ian Holm, which
Yeah.
I have thoughts about that too. He literally says the words Prometheus fire. And boy, when I tell you that I popped in that theater, brother, I was so excited because I thought for certain that Disney or somebody, in the production of this feature would have been like, we're not doing that. Okay. That didn't
Right.
work
Let's
out
leave
for us.
those behind. Let's get away from that weird
Exactly.
stuff.
Which is why I thought that this movie was the reset that it was. That's why I figured they
Yeah.
they placed it in the timeline where they did. But no,
Yeah.
it turns out that the Weyland Yutani Corporation managed to extract the accelerant, which I think
The
is what the
goo.
wiki calls it, but effectively the black goo that is featured in Prometheus and
Hmm.
Alien Covenant heavily. And Rook is the name of the digitally resurrected Ian Holm. In
Hmm.
in the original Alien, he was Ash. So
Hmm.
technically, this is not the same character, but just the same model of android.
Right.
But of
Yeah.
course, because he is employed by the company, he still has the same directive, which is to
Hmm.
to to do whatever is in the best interest of the company. And he worked hand in hand in kind of like extracting this fluid, and he believes that it can be used to effectively spur like immediate evolution in human beings and
Hmm.
make them better prepared to live on it under the horrible mining colony conditions that they do,
Yeah. They'll be
um
better slaves with this stuff. Yeah.
exactly. But then we also see a point where like he tells them this, but then we also see that the rat that they had tested this on, because the rat shares whatever genome with human
25%.
beings. Right,
That's what they
yes.
said. Yeah, 25%.
We see that they effectively resurrect a rat that had been squashed using the black goo, but then
Yeah.
later on, as like a stinger to let you know, oh wait, things are actually worse than you thought. That rat then turns into a horrible demon monster.
You're right.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, so Rook obviously knew that, and that means that Weyland Yutani knows that. So there's no way that they actually think that this thing is meant to spur about immediate evolution in human. They just want to create. It's a bioweapon. It's a bioweapon.
Yeah,
That's
pretty much.
that's what this
Yeah.
is, right? There's
Right.
no smoke and mirrors. It's a bioweapon.
Mhm.
It's the same reasoning behind every other alien movie the Weyland Yutani Corporation wants to,
Yeah.
get a hold of and control and kind of like enforce its will on the xenomorph because it is this perfect killing machine, right?
Right.
Um, I guess we should talk about Resurrected Ian Holm. Did that bother you? Like, it looked rough in the
I
theater,
I
right?
just don't understand how these I've seen like these deep fakes on YouTube of like other like amateurs can do like so much better than like big studios for some reason. I don't understand why. It
It
wasn't the
is
worst I've
strange.
seen. It wasn't the worst I've seen.
No,
But
it was not Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One.
no, it was, but it was a little off-putting at first, but I do appreciate, I think, having that callback to that character. And I was reading because Ridley Scott is like a producer on this one or something
Yeah.
like that, and he had wanted that character to be like have a second like appearance because some of the other androids have been able to have like a second appearance in multiple movies and
Yes.
stuff like that. So I give respect to that sort of thing, and I think it was kind of cool. I didn't think he was going to be as central to the story as he was, because he was in it for like the vast majority of it. He was pulling strings for the vast majority of it. It's kind of
100%. And
interesting.
he ends up being the de facto antagonist of a movie that already has an antagonist, which I thought
Yeah,
was kind of
right.
interesting.
Hmm.
And he's a digital face on a monitor that they see through much of the film. It
Hmm.
reminded me a lot of System Shock, which is another video game where you have this like artificial antagonist that keeps showing up through like a digitized screen to kind of taunt you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Fede Alvarez is just a big gamer, dude. He's one of
He's just a big nerd.
yeah. The I was pretty bothered by it initially, but I think that what has made the reason why I am no longer as taken aback by this is that um Fede Alvarez asked for permission to use Ian Holmes' likeness from his widow
Mm,
and his estate, and they approved it, which is one, that's good. You asked, okay,
yeah,
you did the
that's
bare
like
minimum, which is the
right, yeah,
asking. But
yeah.
apparently his Ian Holmes' widow had said something to the effect of like in his final years, Ian Holm had felt very rejected by Hollywood and that he was not really cared for in the way that he had expected.
Oh, sad.
And to her idea, he would have appreciated being able to, inhabit this character again.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
think that that's just nice. I
That's
appreciate
cool.
that. So that
Yeah.
makes me feel better about it, even if it
Hmm.
does look quite ghastly in the movie.
Which
Um,
at the end of the day it is not an actual person. It's like a robot. So I can make exception, I guess. But it's not like extremely distracting or anything. It wasn't terrible.
No. I did read though that they had built an animatronic and then they like touched it up with CG after the fact. And
Hmm.
I'm like, you could have just left it as an animatronic, right?
Because
Like,
that's what it
because
is.
that's what it is. Yeah. So I thought that
But
that was strange.
in prior iterations of like a hacked AI in the Alien universe, it's just the person's head and then like the
Yeah,
body's
it's
built
just the
around it.
dude's
So
head through a table and they've like put
right,
some
yeah.
tubes around it. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, the crew boards the space station. Things immediately start going awry. There is an awesome sequence where some people get trapped in a med bay with and it's partially flooded, and there are face huggers that are like thawed and released.
Mm.
And I thought that that was terrific. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that
it was
sequence.
cool.
Um, I quite liked the birth of the xenomorph in this. We got a chest burster scene, and they used Chekhov's X-ray light, where earlier in the film one of the characters had found this like X-ray, I don't know, blaster
It's like a
flashlight, whatever.
wand. It's
Yeah,
like a
and
metal detector wand, except
and you
it
can hold
shows
it.
your bones.
Yeah, you can see your bones, you can see like capillaries and blood vessels and everything. And when one of the characters gets a face hugger on them and they're kind of seated with the alien xenomorph and it gestates, they are able to take that and hold it over their shoulder, and you can see it like bursting through their rib cage from inside their body. Awesome. Incredible,
There were
dude.
some very grotesque scenes in this, like very like even when the face huggers were like attacking, like you see the little the
Proboscis or
proboscis,
whatever.
yeah, the
Yeah.
proboscis like going through their mouth. Like we haven't really seen that in any of the like we know what's going on
No.
in the other movies, but this was like it was like this thing was on it. It was like
Yeah.
terrifying to watch. It's like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. And
I
yeah,
will
like you
say
said, the X-ray thing, yeah.
of Fede Alvarez, even though I really like the dude's films, I wouldn't say that he's particularly good with ambiguity or with leaving much to the imagination. Like
Right,
he
yeah, I
seems to
got
be a
that
guy
from
that is like
this.
100% going for it.
Right,
Like
yeah,
um
that makes sense.
and then David Johnson, who I mentioned as Andy, I thought was so terrific because he has a kind of like mid-film personality change when he is
Hmm.
given the, I guess, like artificial intelligence personality of another synthetic that was on the space station. And they upload that, and then his prime directive is changed, but also it seems to kind of like fix any issues that he had up to that point and kind of like
Hmm.
rewire him. So he starts speaking in an English accent and he's
It's
very astute and
Dang
quick. Yeah. Yeah.
it!
But no, he's
No, he's
great, and I
good. He's
thought that
great.
he's really compelling, and yeah, like he's the highlight. I would love for him to play Martian Manhunter. I think that that would be
Oh,
incredible
yeah.
casting for that.
Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, that would have been
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So no, that would be great. And I'm trying to think. I guess I don't want this podcast to be just like, and we're going through every bit of the movie, you
Right.
know. But I want to make sure that I also don't forget anything. I suppose, unless you have something else that you want to call out, we can move to maybe what was my most exciting part of this movie.
Yeah, we can go. Let's go for it. Let's
Okay,
get it.
so in the final 15 minutes of this, Alien Romulus at Large is a homage to the full Alien franchise. It has scenes that directly, you know, have like they attribute themselves to prior scenes, but maybe they are twisted in some way or expanded. And I
Mhm.
think that Fede Alvarez does a very, very good job of that, and doing so with respect while also maintaining his vision. But
Yeah.
Fede also has, like, Don't Breathe is a pretty messed up film. It's got some content in there that makes people very uncomfortable. Evil Dead as well. So I knew that the guy had something under his sleeve, but we didn't know exactly what yet. There is a point where a character in this, played by Isabella Merced, is pregnant. And you know that she is because you're informed of that like at the beginning of the film. And she has been wounded. She is trying to make it back to safety, and the vial of the black goo that had been extracted by the science personnel on the station has been given to her, and she fears that she's not going to make it. So she takes the vial after she's been told by Rook, the synthetic, the AI, like, oh, you should do this for yourself, you know.
Mhm.
She injects herself with it, and she seems fine. But of course, if you were paying attention earlier in the movie, you saw that that rat turned into a grotesque abomination
Yeah.
afterwards. So you know that something is going to come of this. And boy, did I. Boy, did I. And, you know, another, let's say, half hour passes, probably not even that. It might have been 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And they get back onto an escape shuttle that I think was part of their original ship,
Mhm.
and or perhaps just the original ship that they boarded the Romulus with. And
Yeah.
Kaylee Spaney's character has put um, Isabella Merced in cryosleep, and she's preparing, you know, to lock down the ship and to put herself in cryosleep. And then Andy, their synthetic, is going to take them to this paradise planet that they want to go
Mhm.
to. And then you start hearing alarms go off, and she runs to the cryopods, and she sees that it is halfway opened, and she sees that
Oh,
Isabella Merced is in there, and she is giving birth. And she goes, "Oh my
yeah.
God, what happened? She was barely pregnant. There's no
Yeah.
way that she's gone to full term." And of course, I'm cackling like a madman this whole
Oh, you're
time
crazy.
because I
You're
think I know
insane.
what's going to happen.
You're a
Except
freak.
rather than being an immediate creature, it's it's an egg. She
Yes.
effectively births the xenomorph facehugger egg.
Yeah, it's a
And that's what
small
it
one.
looks like. And you see
Yeah.
that. And then the egg is, I can't remember if it's removed or dropped out
Rain
or what happened.
Rain like literally pulls apart the umbilical cord with her hands, which is
Oh
grotesque in
yeah.
itself.
Ugh,
And then
ugh.
the mom is like the mom has just given birth like horribly, and she's like, get that thing away from me. And so Rain just picks it up, carries it off, but then she has to drop it because the acid crap is like leaking from it or whatever.
Well,
And
I feel like maybe she tries to get rid of it, but then
I
it
think,
slightly opens, like it's barely ajar, and she
yeah,
sees what looks like kind of a human face in
it
it.
it looks kind of like a human baby, but you can tell something's
Yeah,
not
you
right
you know
about that
something's off.
baby.
You know something's off.
Something's not right.
So then she drops it, I think, and acid is kind of protruding from it and like leaking out of it, you know, comparable to the blood of the xenomorph, and it ends up going through the hole down into the cargo bay. And then very rapidly this thing grows and grows until we
It's
get this reveal where David Johnson's character Andy, the synthetic, is in the cargo bay, or sorry, in he's with the cryopods. He's checking out on Isabella Merced's character. She looks on in horror, and he turns around, and there is the most disgusting, like terrifying human-ish visage I have seen in a movie, maybe in my life.
it's one of the worst things I've ever seen in a
It
movie, and
it's
not in a
dim.
good way. A good way.
No, yeah, yeah. It's dimly lit, it's stark pale, and you can
Oh my
see that it is a
gosh.
giant, elongated, like disgustingly slim engineer, it looks like, from Prometheus.
Yeah.
But you can tell it's not the same thing exactly just by how dead and sullen its eyes are and how contorted and kind of like malformed
And
it
it's got
looks.
like these pustule holes on the back, and
Yeah.
it's like it is disgusting. It is
So
vile.
your surprise fourth act in this movie, because most of the alien movies have one, they end up having to blow the stowaway alien out of the airlock,
Yeah.
is that I guess that when you take the black goo, which was an accelerant used by the engineers to seed life on other other planets, including our own, because in canon, the engineers
Hmm.
created humans.
Hmm.
If a human being then who is pregnant then ingests or bonds with the black goo in some way, rather than immediately deteriorating their body, I probably because we share some sort of DNA or whatnot. The science is not there, okay? It's just a gross thing. But
Yeah.
they gestate and create a human engineer hybrid that is like a lesser than engineer, except
It,
it also took on a lot of traits of the xenomorph.
right, exactly. Which
It has
leads me to believe that the engineers themselves are like products of their own genetic modification with the black goo.
almost certainly, if I recall correctly, I was reading through wikis the other day about kind of the backstory of all this stuff because I feel like I know a fair amount, but maybe not as much as I would like to.
Mhm.
And it seems to be that the engineers at one point as a civilization lost the ability to procreate. And because of that,
Mm.
they were trying to search the cosmos for ways to kind of like prolong, their lived experience. And they
Interesting.
ended up finding like the god face hugger and let it like germinate a being inside of one of the engineers, and that gave birth to a deacon, which is like the first ever xenomorph. And a
Okay.
deacon is also what you see at the end of Prometheus, that kind of
Yeah.
xenomorph looking alien that isn't exactly an alien. And then somehow throughout years and years of, I guess, scientific research on their own, the engineers were able to isolate and bring about this accelerant and then use it to seed life. But then every time that they did so, they created a lesser version of what was the god entity. So
Mm.
so every successive like humans are lesser versions than the engineers, who are lesser versions than the deacon, who are lesser versions than like the god facehugger or whatnot.
Hmm.
But that also means that every subsequent engineer that was birthed using, I guess, like weird black goo stuff is in some way related genetically to that original deacon, which I think is
Mm.
kind of how we wrap back around to you have a weird human engineer xenomorph hybrid.
Yeah.
um, that was my favorite part of the movie.
It was
I
at 100%.
100%, because I
They
wasn't
made it.
expecting it to be that grotesque and
Yeah.
unsettling.
Oh my gosh.
Especially not in that way. It was so fun and so genuinely frightening. And it's weird
Yeah.
because they gave it human characteristics, and you would think that that would make it less frightening, but the thing smiles
It's
and it has
uncanny.
like black teeth. Yeah, it's like the uncanny valley. It's like
Hmm.
the uncanny valley, and it's horrible. And apparently, this was a physical costume that was worn by like a 7'7". Go on, go on.
If you guys haven't seen, you guys know the video. It's this really skinny guy who's like almost 8 foot tall playing basketball, and he just is able to like put the ball in the hoop like over every all the other kids. It's that guy. Fede Alvarez found this guy from seeing that video on the internet and said, "This guy's great for an abomination.
Yeah,
I got to put
absolutely.
him in the suit." And it's phenomenal. Like it
It's
works
so good.
perfectly. It works
Yeah,
perfectly.
it works so
It's
well.
practical.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
it's practical. It looks incredible on screen. It was genuinely frightening. And I guess that I was just so impressed and kind of appreciative that they did not throw the continuity of Prometheus away. In
Yeah,
fact, they worked it very
they built
centrally
on
into their
top of it.
movie. Yes, yeah.
Yes,
I think that that's so good and just a great way to
it
do
was
that.
great.
Um, I have a theory about where things are going, if
Yes,
you care to hear it.
you've kind of told me about this theory.
Yes. So my thought is that if they were going to make this movie as kind of a reset for the franchise, they would not have touched on the Prometheus or Alien Covenant lore at all. But they
Mhm.
did. And they did
Mhm.
in a way that I think builds upon those films, which tells me that Fede Alvarez, or at least somebody at Disney that allowed Fede Alvarez to do so, has ideas for how to integrate this wider world.
Mm,
And Ridley Scott was a producer on this. He was the one that wanted to bring back the Ian Holm character. He
mhm,
presumably had visibility to all of the stuff that was happening.
mhm.
My theory, and somebody has probably said this at this point, but I thought of this like I was going to bed one night
You
and
were
had
the
this
first one.
idea. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we're going to tell people exactly. But my theory is that this paradise planet that Rain and all of these young people wanted to get to, that is outside of the jurisdiction of Weyland-Yutani, I think it's going to end up being wherever David at the end of Alien Covenant took his ship of embryos
Mm,
to then build his own kind of utopic society full
mhm.
of weird, grotesque creations. And I kind of think that David's ultimate goal, which I didn't get this until I saw Alien Romulus, which is the crazy part. I think David's ultimate goal is to reverse engineer his way back to the God being. Because David's whole
Uh,
thing is that he feels that human beings are lesser than their creators. Okay. So
mhm,
David is a synthetic who feels himself better than humans. Okay.
mhm,
The humans and Prometheus wanted to meet their creators. They finally did. Okay. And David saw them and saw their futility and their frailty, and he realized, oh wait, they're actually not much better than human beings. Well, then he gets to Covenant, and I think that he learns of this kind of like religious mythology that exists in the engineers. He wipes them all out because he feels that they're lesser than, and he starts
mhm,
creating beings trying to get closer and closer to his perfect organism.
mhm.
Well, according to Ridley Scott, the xenomorph in Alien Covenant is not a xenomorph at all. It is a protomorph, I think is
Protomorph,
what
yeah.
they call it. Yes. So I think David is trying to work his way back into engineering that god deacon facehugger entity, right? From like Prometheus lore. And I
Okay.
think that Kaylee Spaney's Rain character is going to end up on that planet and walk
Mm,
into those circumstances. I also think that would technically give you an opportunity to bring back the female lead from Alien Covenant if you wanted
mhm,
to, because she is still presumably alive, and I think that it would work out timeline wise.
mhm,
Um, would they do that? Probably not, but like that's viable to them.
mhm.
Um, if they wanted to bring back Ripley, it would be weird because it would be between movies and Sigourney Weaver's
Yeah,
kind of aged out of that. So I don't think
I
they're going
don't
to do
think
that.
so.
I don't want an in-game style alien movie. That's not what these films are. But I would like to see David again, and I kind of think that people have grown to appreciate those Ridley Scott, late era alien movies more as the
Mhm,
years have gone on.
mhm.
So yeah, that's my theory. That's where I hope that this is going.
I maybe I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Disney would be so gung ho to go in that direction or not. Because what I was reading, they didn't want him to put the offspring creature thing into the movie, and he was like,
Mm,
"Oh, this means I'm doing something good," and so he kept it in the movie.
okay,
And
gotcha.
so I think that they are going to kind of push back against it. I also did a lot of reading about like what Ridley had planned for after Covenant and stuff like that. And I don't know the validity of these sorts of things, but there was like a magazine of Entertainment Weekly or something like that printed about like the full continuity of the Alien universe, and it was presumed that like the films following Covenant would follow um David and his, experimentation, and the
Yeah.
engineers would then follow him due to his actions on Covenant, and that it would lead to the events of the crash derelict on LV-426, which I'm not
Oh,
sure.
okay.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the validity of those claims because I don't think they actually came from Ridley himself. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that necessarily either, because to me, the derelict had been there on LV-426 for like a long time, and
Yeah,
it
like
the
millennia.
yeah, the timeline just doesn't line up for me. I don't think I would like it to go that direction,
Yeah.
but what you said could be possible. Maybe I'm not sure though. I would like to see David revisited because I think Michael Fassbender playing it was phenomenal him playing
He's
that
great in
role.
those movies.
Yeah,
And
and
I mean, to your point, So I guess the idea would be that the engineers, because of the atrocities committed by David, effectively want to find and kill him. Like it's like a revenge
I
mission or
think
something
so.
like that.
Something of that
And
nature.
so then the derelict ship on LV-426 would have been them arriving to try and contend with David. Theoretically, Daniel, the paradise planet from this could be LV-426.
That would be very interesting if it
That I
was.
mean, it's probably not, but I guess it could be. Um, okay, well
But
that is interesting.
um, yeah. But you were saying you didn't want an Endgame type of alien movie. It's kind of funny because if we've learned that they can survive in space, the xenomorphs just in outer space and
Yes,
create these cocoons. So that means that the queen from Aliens is still out there,
that's
and
true. I
and
guess
she
that
could
does
be
mean that.
recovered. So we could get this whole team up here. We could get the xenomorph human hybrid from Alien Resurrection. We could get all these. We get the Deacon from Prometheus. We can get all these people together, make an Endgame alien movie. It would be fantastic.
What are we? Some kind of abomination squad?
That's a Suicide Squad reference, everybody.
Was awesome. Great Suicide Squad reference. True.
Thanks, man. I'm a bit too late on that one, but I thought that I
No,
would
you're
throw that
good.
out there.
Um, But I'm really curious to see where they go from here. My initial thought for sequels for this one, because Fede said that like he already has ideas, but he wants to like hold off a little bit because there is that gap between Alien and Aliens, and he thinks that that was good for those
Yeah,
two films. So I think there's not going to be anything right away, but he's already thinking about this stuff. My initial thought was that the pregnant character's body is still on the ship that they are going to the Paradise Planet to.
yeah,
So the offspring does like feed on her with its weird like tongue
yeah. It
teepee sort
effectively
of
has the
thing.
second jaw situation of the xenomorph, except it's like a weird floppy tongue.
Yeah, it's really weird. It seemed to be feeding on her. Some people say that like it was extracting the black goo that she ingested in herself to like
Yeah,
feed itself to grow even further. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I would be curious to see if like maybe the black goo transforms her, and that's like that starts the events of like the next movie after this one or something like that. I don't know. That could be the
if
case.
she
Maybe
became
not.
like a human alien queen,
So
effectively,
yeah, some sort of
like.
weird thing. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know.
interesting. Yeah.
Maybe.
Man,
Not sure.
sometimes I'm talking about this stuff and I'm like, God, this universe is disgusting. It's
It
just
it, it
really
is.
weird,
It's got
dude.
this really gross science, and it's all due to H.R. Geiger and his
Yeah,
weird art and stuff like that. It's
but I love it.
amazing.
I
I
love it
know
all
it's
though.
great.
Yeah,
I'm glad it exists.
I
It's
am
cool.
too. Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, I think
those are my thoughts.
all of that's quite solid. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or anything you want to say?
I feel like I did, but I feel like I
Yeah.
forgot them. I can't.
It's good, guys. It's good.
It's
We
a good
both very
movie.
much
It's a good
enjoyed it.
watch.
I think
Yeah.
I might have given it a 9 out of 10 on my letterbox review. So
Dang.
yeah, I
Dang.
really, really liked it.
Mhm.
Well,
It's
sweet.
a good one.
Okay. In
Yeah.
that case, we'll wrap up our main topic and then I guess we'll move on to what's on your nightstand. And we've burned through some time, but I figure we could probably talk about this Predator Wolverine comic.
Might as well.
Okay,
You had me
absolutely.
read it. Let's talk
Well,
about it.
it was supposed to be the main topic,
Yeah, I
and then it
know.
just
I
ended
know.
up being that you saw Romulus by yourself, by the way. You're the
Yeah,
one
I
that did
I
that.
wanted to get the clicks. I want to get that hot topic of Alien
Yeah,
Romulus on the podcast.
it's
So
the algorithms,
yeah, the
we're running it
algorithms.
through the algorithms. All right, so this is the what's on your nightstand part of the show, and something that Daniel and I had looked into because we thought that it was going to be the main topic was a recent Marvel Comics crossover called Predator versus Wolverine. So in the vein of our pursuit of the Alien franchise,
Hmm.
um, when Disney as a corporation acquired 20th Century Fox, they also acquired the printing licenses for the Alien Predator franchises, and they had recently relaunched both Alien and Predator in comic form under the Marvel Comics banner, and that also meant that they could have crossovers with some of their superhero characters. So, Predator versus Wolverine is a four-issue miniseries, and it has quite a few different artists on it and a pretty
Hmm.
solid creative team altogether. Written by Benjamin Percy, Artists Ken Lashley, Greg Land, Jay Leiston, Andrea DeVito, Hayden Sherman, Kai Zama, Gavin Guidry, all of which very, unique talents. And
Hmm.
the kind of core conceit of this and why it was so exciting maybe to do it with Wolverine as a character is that he's lived for a very long time. So
Hmm.
each of these artists tackle a different era in which
Hmm.
Wolverine interacted with the Predator.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean that's a pretty good place to start it. Daniel, what did you think of Predator versus Wolverine?
I really like that stylistic choice of getting different artists for each era of Wolverine's life. I thought that was really well executed, and I really and think that goes to like the whole effect of this is that it does go throughout most of Wolverine's life. This conflict, the ongoing conflict between him and this predator that's come to Earth to claim a great prize, and Wolverine proves to be a formidable opponent, and eventually, he gets the better end of the deal at like, after years and years of conflict and stuff like that. But yeah, I thought it was really cool. It was, when you told me you suggested that I read this, I thought it was just going to be like they're going to slash each other and they're going to fight and there's going to be explosions. There is that, but like it's really introspective into Wolverine, his character, and I was not expecting to see that in
Yeah,
this.
I would agree with all of that. I will say the most exciting part of this comic is the premise. And I don't mean for that to be like a scathing critique of the comic, but unfortunately, your idea as an audience member of what a confrontation between Wolverine and the, infamous Predator would be is probably more exciting than what the book is going to be. But maybe that's where it would surprise you because yeah, it
Hmm.
is a surprisingly meditative introspective journey into Wolverine as a character and how he
Yeah.
contends with something like this. Um, I would say that realistically, the Predator maybe has some more. You get more information about Wolverine because it's told from his perspective, but
Right.
there's quite a lot of Predator lore that's packed into here as well that I
Hmm.
wasn't expecting to see that I found unique to this particular interpretation of the Yautja as a species.
Hmm.
Um, I will say some of the art is maybe more enjoyable than others. I do have
Yeah.
favorites. Um, Now that's not to say anytime that Daniel and I are talking about our impression of the artwork, we are not critiquing it in a legitimate sense. We just have, our preferred idea of what
Yeah.
these characters should look like. Obviously, anybody that is, working at this level does a great job, and I know that it's a very difficult thing to accomplish. I'm trying to improve every day as an artist. So, yeah, but my favorite segment of this actually is the unsurprisingly is the Weapon X chapter. And that
Mm.
is while Wolverine is part of the clandestine Weapon X program,
Mm.
he has effectively made you know, a mindless, non-thinking killing machine. All of his autonomy has been taken away from him. His mind is routinely wiped, and the Predator is there to take him down. And he's actually at a point in time where he may not even remember who the Predator is, but he's still experiencing this kind of like innate berserker rage. But one of the really fun and kind of unique twists of this is that famous kind of giant CRT computer screen that Wolverine wore in the Weapon X comics appears to have been a modified version or at least like engineered out of the technology that existed in the like Predator heat sensing helmet. I
Yeah.
thought that was really fun.
That,
I actually
yeah.
enjoyed that a
That's
lot.
cool. Yeah.
Did, did you have a particular chapter that kind of like, stuck out to you as being better than the others, or do you think that it was just a really solid kind of consistent package?
I think my favorite section would be the X-Men section when the Predator attacks
The mansion.
the mansion. I mean just the artwork of that was my favorite, and also it was kind of more somber because Wolverine was like, I gotta fight this guy alone, and the
Yeah.
X-Men are like, you're not alone, I'm set for that kind of stuff, and I really like that. But yeah, overall, I think it was consistently strong to me. I thought I liked it throughout the whole thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not sure exactly what I was expecting out of it, and I'm probably being a bit more harsh than I should be. Um, I thought that the Predator is a petty character, you know, like
yes,
anytime that you see one on screen when they're bested, you know, they'll like nuke the whole surrounding area because they're unwilling to
right.
actually you know, lose the fight, so to speak. But I would
Hmm.
say that that's predominantly a movie characteristic. Like there have been since Dark Horse Comics was publishing I guess like early 90s, that would have been the Alien and Predator license. There's been so much expanded material covering the Predator, and I was kind of hoping that this would have been more of like an ongoing ritualistic feud that comes out of like respect for one another and not just, oh, Wolverine's the ultimate prize.
Yeah,
I'm going to get him by any means necessary.
right.
And then I end up dying at the end anyway. I wanted the Predator, I guess, to be more intelligent. Like how did it not
Hmm.
know, being that it's fought this same guy over hundreds of years and it apparently remembers him and keeps coming back to try and bag him, how has it not put together yet that he heals and that the Predator, like you know, self-detonating at the end of the story is not going to kill Wolverine? Yeah, like it just seemed very bizarre to
I
me.
don't know. Maybe he thought that whatever the nuke would be too much for him. I don't know. Maybe.
He does
I
at one
don't.
point dissolve Wolverine's face, and that was pretty awesome.
There is some really it's very graphic as you would probably expect a comic book called Predator versus Wolverine to be. But like yeah, the section where like he melts his face off and it's just his skull, the adamantium skull. Oh my gosh, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
No,
But
there's
yeah,
definitely some great imagery in here, and then I think you do get a really solid characterization of Wolverine in a very kind of like succinct view of who he is as a character and the things that he
yeah,
values and like why he functions the way that he does.
hmm,
So I would say overall, very good Wolverine story. Kind of
yes,
less than stellar Predator story for me.
right. It was definitely skewed towards Wolverine here. The Predator is just scary monster antagonist for the most of it. So
Exactly. I kind of felt while I was reading this that this book does not in any way require the antagonist actually be a predator. Like it's called the
yeah,
Predator. It exhibits some of the characteristics of the Predator, but I feel like this could have been any other X-Men villain
yeah,
just on like a
probably,
certain day of the week, you know? Like, oh,
probably,
he just
yeah.
decided like there's an X-Men villain, I think Executioner is the character's name, but he's
Hmm.
like a human being that is like augmented himself in order to fight the mutants because he has, you know, like prejudices and whatnot. I feel
Hmm.
like the Predator in this could have been replaced with the Executioner. He could have been replaced with Taskmaster. Like he just seems very interchangeable for other villainous roles in these superhero comics. And
Hmm.
perhaps I was hoping for this to be a bit more elevated.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, I guess to look at our scale, we can't really use the would I pay. Well, yeah, okay. I would pay full price for this comic because I did. Okay. Like I did and I read it and I enjoyed it and it went on my shelf. But like, am I going to go back to this? Probably not.
See, I have a different opinion of it because I did not pay for this. I picked it up at my local library. Shout out to the
Let's
library system.
go.
And so maybe that affects my perception of it because I didn't shell out any money for it. I don't think I would buy this. I don't think I would. But I mean I enjoyed reading it and I got it for free. So yeah, I would
Okay.
pay enough
That's well
for
then
that. Yeah.
we'll go with that assessment. I think that
Yeah.
that's a good way to. So it looks like most of our ratings are just going to be, are you willing to spend money on this? Is kind of how
Yeah,
this
pretty
works.
much. Pretty
Yeah.
much. That I mean, that's the most pressing thing for these sorts of things for people. So,
Yeah, look, if you're wanting to read something Wolverine related, there are tons and tons of Wolverine comics
yeah.
out there, either as part of an ensemble or in his solo stuff. I would read some of the Frank Miller Japanese era Wolverine stuff from the 80s. Old Man Logan is great. Weapon X, Barry Windsor Smith. I mean, there's a ton of Wolverine stuff to be read
Hmm.
outside of this. And then if you want anything Predator related, I would look at any of the Dark Horse Publications Predator
Yeah.
stuff from the 90s and on. probably before Disney slash Marvel got the license.
Right.
Which
Mhm.
again, nothing against any of the people that worked on this. It's a very fun read. Just didn't really hit me the way that I was hoping for it to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that you had mentioned that you had something else that was worth talking
Oh
about.
yes.
Yeah.
On my nightstand, Duster has released a new album. I just saw it come across my.
Woo!
I know, big day for us guys. In Dreams by Duster just released. Um, was it today or yesterday? Just released yesterday. 13 songs. Um, I listened to it today. I thought it was pretty good, you know. Obviously it's not going to be as, you know, his hard as like their first two albums or stuff like that, but the fact that
Yeah.
they're still making music at this point that's still like of decent quality, you don't really see that very often with these sorts of bands, and I liked it. So yeah, go listen to it.
That's awesome. I have not listened to that yet, but I am quite a big fan, so I will definitely be checking that out soon.
Mhm.
I would say generally Duster makes music for sad people. Do you think
Yeah,
that's a
this is
reasonable assessment?
yeah, and it's another sad album. It's great. It's
Let's
fantastic.
go. Incredible. Nothing makes me happier than world's biggest Elliott Smith fan here. Nothing actually makes me happier than being deafeningly sad.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Makes you feel
um,
alive.
okay, well that's awesome. No, I'm
Yeah.
really happy. So 13 songs. How long is it roughly? Do you know?
48, 45, 48 minutes, I think is what it said. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty tight album, honestly. Like that's
Yeah.
not that
It's
seems
not
to
the,
be par for the course nowadays.
yeah, there's not the songs aren't very long. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Well, I'm gonna check that out. I think that's a great recommendation. I
Hmm.
appreciate that. Um, I guess on my nightstand, I have been playing the Call of Duty Black Ops 6 beta. Fortunately, I am a Game Pass subscriber, so I'm able to play that for this early access weekend. And look, I'm gonna keep it real with the audience right now. I was never particularly good at first person shooters,
And I'm even
and
worse.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Daniel and I are actually a very good pair in that we're both kind of bad. But I I will never be as good as I was when I was like 14 years old because at that point in time, you feel like you have all the time in the world, and what you do is that you get home from school and you play video games with
Right.
your buddies, and you like hone those skills. Those aren't things that I practice anymore. But I will say that I was pleasantly surprised to hop onto this Black Ops 6 beta and test it out. I had some time over this weekend, and yeah, I mean, it's a Call of Duty. For anybody trying to tell you that things have changed to such an extent that you won't recognize it anymore, they're lying to you. It's a Call of Duty. It feels very much like any other Call of Duty that I played. I guess the closest um the closest Call of Duty in recent memory would be Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. God, these names are getting out of hand.
I
I get
know.
confused just saying them, but I think
Jeez.
that one was 2 or 3 years ago, and this is effectively a sequel to that. So,
Mhm.
very comparable. They've overhauled parts of the multiplayer experience. They've introduced something that they call Omni movement, which is that you can sprint not just forward, backward, and kind of at a diagonal. Like you can go
It's
directly to the side. Really, in any direction that you point, your joystick, you can move, and you can also
yeah,
move like rapidly and aggressively. There's no kind of
right.
like inhibiting factor that keeps you from accelerating your character
Yeah.
in terms of your traversal speed. And then you can also dive forwards, backwards, side. Like you can switch your position mid-air. You could dive out of a window forward, but then turn around while you're like mid-air and engage the person that was immediately
Yeah.
behind you. So
Hmm.
it seems like what they wanted to do is create the idea that you are an action hero.
Hmm.
Like that's what this feels like to me. It feels like somebody watched some John Woo like Hong Kong action films where the people are jumping and firing both of the pistols at the same time, and they're like,
Yeah.
let's just do that actually. So
Yeah.
that's the experience. I've been enjoying it a fair amount. I don't feel like the skill gap is so crazy that I can't get in and play a few games, and I'm honestly doing pretty well. So the main enjoyment of playing a multiplayer shooter is that you do well, and in this case, I've been
Yeah.
doing well enough to like it. Does that mean that it's like objectively, stellar, or that I'm the right person to ask questions about Call of Duty? No, I'm just a guy
And
Um,
it's just another COD,
it's
is what
just
it
another
is.
COD. I'll be excited to play the zombies experience. I lean more, into that than I do other things
Mhm.
because I'm a big horror buff. So I'll check that out, and I might have more to actually say in terms of like objective quality metrics about that later on.
Mhm.
Um, but
We'll
yeah, I
probably
think
do
that's
an
all I've.
episode when it comes out, probably.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's realistically all that I've kind of got to say about that. You got anything else you want to put out there?
Hope everybody has a great day.
I was really hoping that you were gonna do the and then wait 5 to 7 seconds and then no, just like you did last week, and
I'm
that
not
would be
gonna,
like a regular
no,
thing.
I'm not gonna be that guy that does the thing every episode.
Okay, well,
Maybe every now and then I
well,
might.
we'll see
You
about
just have
that.
to wait.
We're gonna be 3 or 4 episodes away from this, and then you're going to have already picked up like a regular thing that you do, and you'll
Probably,
be like, oh, of
probably.
course. Okay, well, that has been the episode. This is the Gutter Run Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening and tuning in this week.
Yeah,
Remember, mail call if you want us to answer your
send us
questions or respond
stuff.
to any of your mail. Send us stuff. That is gutterrunpodcasting@gmail.com. But yeah, that's been the episode. I'm Andrew. Daniel, thank you so much.
Thank you, as always. Great,
Absolutely.
great
And
stuff.
have a blessed day,
Yeah,
everyone.
see ya.